Hello from Ashland Congregational UCC, where we are home of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival and the Rogue Creamery, best cheese in the world.
We lift up a prayer that we as a conference may together be a source of hope and strength for all of us in our struggles.
Hi, we're at the UCC in White Salmon, Washington.
And we are praying for justice and joy for everyone born.
And we are home to a beautiful view of Mount Hood.
Hello from Boise, Idaho. My name is Pastor Rob Tullock, and I am the pastor here at Boise First Congregational United Church of Christ. And I'm excited for this annual gathering because it will be my first as a member of the UCC clergy.
Greetings from Bridgeport United Church of Christ in Northeast Portland. I'm Kristen Burkert, the moderator, and I'm here on our first Sunday drive-through after church, where we continue our support for the neighborhood school backpack program by bringing in non-perishable food. And we also put in some time for trading puzzles. We're delighted to be part of the gathering this year.
Hi everyone, I'm Adam, pastor here at Clackamas United Church of Christ.
Hi, I'm Amira, Minister of Justice and Witness at Clackamas United Church of Christ.
Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm just a member of Clackamas United Church of Christ, although I sing in the choir.
And we are home of
Some sign.
and also
We were the recipient of the very first Be the Church Award from the United Church of Christ and our rain garden.
and we are looking forward to annual gatherings so that
We can work with others to spread a more just world.
and
reconnect with UCC friends from around the conference.
we look forward to seeing you soon.
Hillsboro United Church of Christ. I am moderator Becky Luther.
I'm Laura Beeler, Camp Adams Elder.
And I'm Reverend Adam Hange, the pastor here of Hillsboro First Congregational and the moderator of the Central Pacific Conference. Greetings to you, and we are so glad to be here together with you for this virtual annual gathering. Today our prayer and our hope for the world is that
we can join together to be the hands and feet of Christ at work in the world to spread God's love.
Great to be here.
Hello from Lake Oswego UCC, where we are proud of LO Respond to Racism and are happy to be here.
We lift up a blessing that we may together stand up for God's love and justice.
Hello from Medford Congregational United Church of Christ, located in the beautiful Rogue Valley in the heart of Southern Oregon. We are proud to be an open and affirming just peace, creation, justice church. I am Marge Murch and am blessed to be part of the Church Council. This congregation has continued to support all its ministries and each other with love and prayers. Even with missing the in-person connections, we have been creative in staying in touch and reaching out to each other. Blessings to all of you in these unprecedented times. Please make sure to vote. Make new friends this weekend and reconnect with the old.
Hello, I'm Laura Lee Kent, the pastor at the Medford Congregational United Church of Christ. Today we offer the intention that we may together as a conference be witnesses to God's love in our area and in the world. And we also seek to be witnesses to God's love with and for each other as we journey through these difficult days. Amen.
Peace from Park Rose Community United Church of Christ. We don't just go to church, we are the church.
Greetings from Pocatello, First Congregational United Church of Christ. Largest pipes and the smallest labyrinth in all of Pocatello.
Working on refocusing and restructuring to better serve the beloved community. And we are praying for healing
in our church,
in our community, and in our world.
This is the Dallas United Church of Christ Congregational, sending you blessings and offering fellowship from the Columbia River and Oregon. May we have a blessed conference, together in spirit, if not in body.
Okay, so are we home of or proud of, or what do we want to say? What do we want to say about ourselves?
Also known as the Couve.
The Couve.
No, Vantucky. No, Vantucky.
Vancouveria. Amsterdam.
we are proud of.
What do we like about ourselves, you guys?
Geez, that's hard.
How much time do you have?
Welcome from Vancouver United Church of Christ.
And Vancouver, Washington.
We're proud to be a progressive voice of faith in Clark County.
We're happy to be here.
We hold the intention for this conference gathering to be transformative.
Prayers from the Vancouver UCC Council.
Hello, Central Pacific Conference. This is Waverly Heights United Church of Christ saying hello.
We just finished our second outdoor service, socially distanced, of course.
And we got to stand far apart in the parking lot and sing to each other.
And this is our Black Lives Matter memorial art installation. Should we offer this prayer and blessing?
We are remembering that all of us have a song in our hearts.
And we want the heart to come out of our mouths and our ears and into the community and have the community sing with us again.
I am Kathy Abend. I am the pastor of Right Church, Right UCC Church in Boise, Idaho, and I couldn't be happier to be a part of this community. This happens to be our Tuesday night Bible study, and I have volunteered all of them to help tell us about what we do here at Right Church. Our vision statement is this: we are a Christ-centered church that reaches out in love, with love, to meet the needs of the community around us. And here's a few ways of how we do it.
Hi, I'm Dick Thatcher, and we have a very vibrant community garden that is serving the needs of a number of refugee families in Boise.
We're Clint and Glenda Randall, and we have the privilege of going to Honduras at least once a year to help with medical clinics.
I'm Janice Agard, and I head up the community suppers for people that need meals.
I'm Diane, and one of the fun things that we do at Right Church is to provide quilts that we make for one of the local churches, and gives out to young people, babies, folks who need a warm and comforting presence around them.
I'm Trish, and I work sometimes as a greeter/usher, and I think our church does an excellent job in our community of making not just some, but all people feel extremely welcome, near, and loved.
I'm Amelia, and I'm getting to benefit from Right Church's embracing of technology and how they love members, even the ones that live in Missouri. And I also can't talk about this church without saying that this is a church that really does love Jesus Christ and wants to grow in a relationship with Jesus, in love of God and in love of people.
Larry Etter, and I'm a retired pastor and a member of Right Community Church. And I basically do nothing except receive the love and warmth of the church and try extremely hard to return that same love and warmth.
I'm Jeff McAwee, and we participate in food distribution for the seniors in the apartment complex next door to church.
Thank you, everybody. That's a taste of what we do here at Right Church. We're excited to be a part of the Central Pacific Conference, and go conference. Let's have a good time together. God bless you all. Thanks.
Well, good morning and welcome. It is so good to have you all here with us today. It's a delight to see you joining in the chat there. If you haven't already figured it out, today is a webinar format. So as we gather, we want to let you know that your video is not broken. You are able to share when you need to, but we'll have to elevate you. So just a couple quick things, technical things. At the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should see a couple things. You should see a place to chat. And if you have a question there, that's a good place. You should also see on the right-hand side a Q&A. So if you have a question about an issue of business or a question you think that the whole assembly might benefit from knowing the answer to, we invite you to ask it there, because the chat can fill up and hard to find things after a little while. I want to say a special thank you to our tech hosts, Gail D., Nancy Cook, Pam Rossio, Adam Erickson, and Tyler Connolly for helping kind of facilitate the meeting right now. As we do this, I want to acknowledge that some people might be joining from their telephone, and so if that is you, we will try to verbalize things that are shared in the chat as we're able, questions that are shared there, and make sure that everyone gets heard. If you have difficulty, you can reach out to one of our tech hosts, and I'll invite, Pam Rossio has offered to have her cell phone there, so if you need to text her, she can help answer any questions you're having. As we're doing this, one of the things we're learning is that we cannot just do what we usually do and throw it in front of a computer. So we have tried to design today's meeting with that in mind. And I promised you yesterday that we would have time for storytelling, time for decision-making, and time for celebration. And we have organized our agenda around those things today. But as we do this, I want to just acknowledge that we have a tight schedule. We're trying to do a lot of things that we used to do in a full day or a full weekend. So we have a tight timeline. We're going to be trying to move through things pretty quickly, but we don't want to go so fast that, that your voice isn't heard. We acknowledge the limitations of this technological format, but there is a way for us to slow down and make sure that each person gets their voice heard, so we can do the business of the church together. I want to also just borrow from Cedar Hills and Reverend Mary Sue Evers that we are aiming for connection and not perfection. So we thank you for your grace and your generosity, and for the chance to do this. We're all trying to do our very best, and we appreciate your patience, understanding, and grace as we do that. Now I'd like to turn it over to Tyler Connolly, our conference minister, to give us a spiritual grounding, and then he will introduce Natalie Becker for a word. Tyler.
Good morning, everyone. We are the United Church of Christ in Southern Washington, Oregon, and Southern Idaho. And thank you for being the United Church of Christ in your community. And thank you for being the United Church of Christ over the internet with me today. Listen to these words from Ecclesiastes. Better two than one. They will have a good reward for their toil. When someone falls, a companion can help them up again. But alas, for those who are alone, with no one to help them up. If two lie side by side, they keep one another warm. But how can one keep warm alone? If a person is alone, an assailant may overpower them, but two can resist. and a cord of 3 strands is not quickly snapped. We have today a cord of over 125 strands. And I know that this is not the way that we wanted to be better together this year. We were all hoping to be in Medford and Ashland. But we are here together over the internet, together across space and time in ways that we might not have even thought possible a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, or 5 years ago. Laura Lee and Christina and our other members and chaplains in Medford and Ashland, we also realize that we wish we could be with you for another reason, because of the terrible fires that just came. But I hope you know that we are with you across the internet, over the airwaves. And I am so grateful for this huge United Church of Christ that has been with us in all of this year. I'm going to invite now Natalie Becker. And when we did the conservation easement at Camp Adams, one of the things that we had to do was that we were required to begin to build relationships with the First Nations who had the land before it was stolen, and who could help us to find out the value and remember the value of that land and how it mattered. And so I'm going to invite now Natalie for our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Tyler. Good morning, everybody. It's really my honor to be with you this morning to offer up this land acknowledgement. So give me a moment. I'm going to share my screen so that you can follow along as I read the text. As we gather today in virtual connection, we acknowledge that we all reside on the common ground of the First Nations of this region. As we ground ourselves in this sacred common land, we recognize our siblings, the Shoshone Bannock and Nez Perce. We acknowledge the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, the Confederated Tribes of Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw, the Confederated Tribes of Siletz, the Coquille, the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla, and the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. We acknowledge the Cow Creek Band of Umpqua, the Klamath, and the Burns Paiute. We acknowledge that, led and justified by the doctrine of discovery, people of European descent created the fences and boundaries that carved this common sacred land into property to be owned, bought, and sold, and that in so doing disconnected us from Creator's call to live in communion with all of creation. As we gather as the Central Pacific Conference of the United Church of Christ in business and in worship, we acknowledge that this disconnection has resulted in grave racial and environmental injustices, which we dedicate ourselves to redress in theology and practice. We acknowledge and honor the spiritual authority of the First Nations who first received this land as a gift from Creator. We honor the elders and commit ourselves to ongoing practices of listening, repentance, and reconnection. Thank you all. And I look forward to the rest of our time together this morning.
Thank you, Natalie. And now I would like to invite our immediate past moderator, Linda Jaramillo, to offer a prayer of invocation for our time together today. Linda.
Thank you, Adam. Let us be in the spirit of prayer together. Dios, en nuestras vidas y nuestros corazones, aquí estamos otra vez en tu presencia, localizados y localizadas en varias partes de la Iglesia Unida de Cristo, en Oregon, en Idaho, en Washington y más, in Connecticut, Massachusetts, Ohio, Alabama, Germany. We are better together, mejor juntos. God of light and all darkness, God of the beautiful skies and the troubled earth, God of the majestic mountains and infertile valleys, God of stunning rainbows and terrifying storms, God of the plush forests and arid deserts, God of the humans, the animals, the fish, and the birds. We are better together as we offer our gratitude for everything in the universe. Mejor juntos. Holy One, you make the impossible possible. You make what seems hopeless hopeful. You are a companion to the lonely. You listen to the cries and to the laughter. You do all this for us because we are your kin, created in your image. We are better together in the many ways that generosity is present among your kin in good times and in troubling times. Mejor juntos. Forgive us our wrongdoings against you and against one another. Pray for us, even when we do not pray for ourselves. Bless this gathering of your family on this day and in the days ahead. We give thanks for the many ways that technology has held us close as we are physically apart, but socially close in spirit, heart, and soul. We are better together in knowing that grace always prevails. Mejor juntos. En todos tus nombres, y en el nombre de nuestro Salvador Jesucristo, y con el poder del Espíritu Santo, mejor juntos. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Linda, for your prayer, for your words. I am, again, Reverend Adam Hange. I am the pastor of Hillsborough First Congregational United Church of Christ, and I am your moderator for the 2019-2020 year. And now, in my official duties as moderator, I officially call this business meeting of the 2020 General Assembly of the Central Pacific Conference of the United Church of Christ to order. This morning, as we proceed, we will be using our standing rules. You should have seen those in our document packet that was shared, but we did share the document packet again in the chat messages. If you need to refer to those there, then I invite you to do that. Before we proceed with that, I would like to appoint our parliamentarian. Reverend Mary Sue Evers from Cedar Hills United Church of Christ is present with us and will be following along and helping us keep on track of our parliamentarian guidelines. But now we would like to proceed using our standing rules, and if there is no objection, we will adopt them by consensus. So if you have an objection, we invite you to indicate that by raising your hand or indicating so in the chat. We'll give you just a few moments to do that. Seeing no objections, well, at this point, we need to go ahead and make sure that we've established a quorum. So we need to make sure as Secretary, do we have the necessary 50 delegates constituting more than half of our congregations? It appears we do. All right. can we move Gail D to the next poll for the adoption of the standing rules? So now we invite you to vote yes, no, or abstain to the adoption of standing rules to proceed with our business.
Hey, Adam.
Yes.
We have a question in the chat, which might just be a good reminder for folks as we begin voting. Kristen asks, how do we know that all voted are eligible?
So much as in a meeting in the room, it is an honor system. So you should know if you are a clergy person, retired clergy person, licensed minister, or designated delegate from your local church, then you are eligible to vote. Voting is stopped, and checking with our secretary, do we have any votes by email or text message?
I have one yes.
Okay. So by my count, we have
I've got to change that to 2.
2 yes?
Yes.
Okay. So it was a 99% yes, 1 abstention, and 2 yeses by chat or email. So the motion passes. So Gail, by my count, we had 94 vote in our poll, and we had 2 submit electronic votes for a total of 96.
That's what I see, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, now I'd like to proceed. The motion passes. We move forward with the standing rules, and I'd like to proceed by handing it off to Pam Rossio, our board secretary, for the approval of the 2019 annual gathering minutes.
So hopefully you've all received the minutes in your packet. And so I am 2 roles. I've been the board secretary for 3 years, and this will be my last time of minutes. And so hopefully you will have looked at that. And we are going to be taking not an official poll vote, but it's by consensus. I think Adam will explain it more.
Yes, so as we've moved forward here, if you had a chance to review the minutes, hopefully by now, if there is no objection, we will adopt them by consensus. If you do not support the adoption of the minutes as presented, then you can raise a hand or indicate so, and we can elevate you to make that amendment if necessary. So we'll just give you a moment now if there are any who have an objection to let us know. Hearing no objections, let us proceed with the approval of the 2019 annual gathering minutes as presented. Thank you. Thank you, Pam. Now I'd like to turn it over to our immediate past moderator, Linda Jaramillo, for the presentation of our proposed changes to our bylaws. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. I'm going to ask Gail if she would put the slide up so that I can explain it to you. Thank you, Gail. Just to let you all know that this consideration was taken up by the board of directors a couple or 3 months ago to really speak to how our requirements are that 14 members each ministry team needs to have 14 members. And our feeling was that sometimes some committees have 14 members, but others have operated with far less. And what we found was, as you all know, the difficulty in recruiting members for all of these teams, these ministry teams. However, more importantly, some of them really function if they don't have subgroups or don't have working groups. Some may function with less members. So the board considered this, and after serious consideration, discernment, and deliberation, the board felt that it may be better for us to put something in the bylaws that spoke to the potential for a little bit of flexibility in the numbers of members of the teams. So we sent this out on August 22nd with the announcement of the meeting per the requirement in our bylaws for amendments. So here it is, Article 7, ministry teams and working groups. You can see the highlighted. To ensure some flexibility, that we're adding that each ministry team shall consist of not less than 6 or more than 14 members. In so keeping, we did speak to the chairs of the committees, the teams, the ministry teams, and asked them what size of team they felt was really the most workable. And the nominations committee then followed to secure the seats for that slate of officers in the team. So you'll find that the nominations committee has done that work. And so basically, if this bylaw is not passed, then the nominations committee would have to go back and fill in those teams in the slots that are designated. Now, the second piece in 7 is working groups. What we found was the working groups were actually confined to ministry teams. But the finding was that the board of directors, in fact, has appointed a couple of working groups, and really this is simply just to extend the potential and possibility of the board also creating working groups. So that's the second part of this amendment that we're asking for. So with that, Adam, again, the board sent this out, and this bylaw amendment is coming from the board of directors, recommended by the board of directors. So it's my understanding that it does not need a second. So that's what we are proposing, that composition of the teams, and second is working groups.
Thank you, Linda. So proceeding forward with this proposed adjustment to our Constitution bylaws, we now enter a time for discussion. I see that there is a question in the chat box from Bruce Bishop. How many regions are there? If there are more than 3 members now, is there a plan to make the adjustment? Linda, can you speak to that?
The bylaws call for us to be representative, or at least conscious of the representation across the regions. The conference has informally identified regions as the southern Oregon part, Idaho, and the northern part of Oregon. So the attention, and in fact, we will continue to adhere to that part of the bylaws that speaks to representation from regions. As far as I know, in fact, you've seen the nominations report, there is not a committee that is less than 10 or 12 people. So that will give us the opportunity to continue to live into that value that we have across the conference. And just another point of information, as the Committee on Ministry has determined, because of its work, that they will continue to have 14 members. So again, that opens the opportunity for representation across the conference. I hope that answers the question.
Bruce, if that does not answer your question, could you please let us know? Bruce responds, as I read the bylaw, it says, shall not exceed more than 3 from each region.
I understand the question. I also have to say that, frankly, the board of directors is actually going to look at all of the bylaws in this next year. That's been one of the commitments that the board has made, but also the fact that historically there has been difficulty in some instances. Now, I also have to say, difficulty in some instances to make sure we have that balance. However, I do have to say that in the process of nominations, there was a real, there was a far more potential for us to have the representation because of the virtual platform that we're using. So often if we were meeting in person, it was difficult for persons to travel. And as you all know, that this platform of Zoom has really created an opportunity for more representation and more presence. So that's what we're looking forward to. And in that regard, the balance is not always as it is indicated, but the effort is really made to do that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for discussion pertinent to the amendments as presented?
It looks like Dana McBrien has their hand raised.
Shall we elevate Dana to ask the question?
We can also just allow her to talk.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, so please indicate your name, the congregation, whether you're a voting delegate, and then your question.
Hi, so my name is Dana McBrien from Salem. I'm a retired clergy, so I'm voting. I was just wondering how you came up with the number 6. It seems like from my studies long ago, the best size groups are 8 to 12. And oftentimes people aren't able to show up to a meeting, so you may have only 4. Although I suppose with a small group, you can also decide to reschedule. But I just wondering, 6 sounds fairly small. I was wondering how you came up with that number.
We discussed several options. We discussed, how that might work. I think the 6 was really what we landed on to make sure that we at least had, an opportunity to represent the conference widely. Now, to be honest, I couldn't answer definitely how we came up with 6, but it was after much deliberation discussion to lend as much flexibility as possible.
Thank you, Dana, for your question. Thank you, Linda.
And Linda, in the queue, this is Pam.
Yes.
In the Q&A, it said, what are the geographic regions of the conference now? And will the regions be formalized? It sounds rather informal now. Maybe I'm not hearing that correctly.
I think it depends. Historically, my understanding is that the regions have been informal, as referenced in the bylaws, but the practice has been to make sure that we have representation from the southern part of Oregon, representation from Idaho, representation from the northern part of Oregon, which would mean the metro area, and the gorge, and then the Willamette Valley. So while we claim that, I think this is a good notation for the board review of the minutes. If there is intentionality about claiming regions, probably would be good to identify them. At this point, it's been, my understanding, an informal recognition.
Thank you. So we've got a few more comments in the Q&A. Really today we are talking about the amendments presented here. So we can vote to approve them or vote not to approve them and send them back. As presented, if there are just any other questions, clarifying questions about the amendments as presented, we can answer those here. We're happy to hold suggestions for future deliberations with the board of directors and the assembly. I think at this point we would like to call the question, and we have Andrea Sevitson would like to be recognized. So Andrea, we're going to allow you to speak and invite you to introduce yourself, the church you're from, whether you're a voting delegate, and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Andrea Sevitson, Lincoln City, and I am a voting delegate. So I don't have any problems with this amendment on the number vis-a-vis the regions per se, but I do hear a lack of specificity then about how that gets immediately implemented. And that troubles me, because you've got something in place and it says only, what is it, a maximum of 3 people from each region. And yet I can easily see the Portland metro area, or, because of officers, committee chairs and things like that, I can easily see the number of 3 from a particular region being maxed out quite quickly. So I understand for committee members that might work. I'm not sure how that works for officers. And I'm also troubled by the fact that there is not a specificity of regions at this current time. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. So we have a vote in the comment in the chat from Kim Vogel. The bylaws should not be so specific that they lock you into things that must be changed by the greater body. They give a framework which then should be specified by a policy. So having given time for discussion, I believe.
And I just remind you, Adam, just that the only changes are what was highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing that the board is forwarding for consideration of the assembly.
Thank you. Yes, so there are the highlighted sections indicate the changes. The bylaws as they already exist are the rest of the portion. So we're voting only on the highlighted portions. We'd like to have the language presented again. You can see that in the documents packet that was emailed out to us. And if you see in the chat, if maybe one of our tech hosts could link that again. There you go.
Just to add that the board will consider all of the comments that were shared in its work in terms of looking at the bylaws into this year. Those have been very helpful.
Thank you. So having given time for discussion and seeing that comments have been helpful, but have slowed down now, I'd like to invite us, as this is presented from committee, to move right forward to call the vote. So we invite you to indicate in the poll that we will share in just a moment. If you are voting by text message as a voting delegate, you're able to indicate there. I think many of the comments that have been shared from Sarah Rosenhau, as we proceed to a vote, we will keep any other discussion comments in the record, and that can be considered by the board as it moves forward. So Gail, would you share the next poll? So we've begun voting. Just to note that if you are a panelist, the technology doesn't let you vote in the poll directly, so you need to text your vote to Pam. And a reminder that all board officers are voting delegates. So we have a comment in chat. Again, we're into the voting section, so we'll review any other discussion and share it with the board of directors for future amendments to the bylaws. So with 8 who have voted by text, 100 voted through the online poll, the motion carries. The votes are 92% yes, 5% no, 3% abstentions. Adding in the votes for by text, that would be 100 votes yes, 5 votes no, 3 votes to abstain. The motion carries. Motion passes. Okay, thank you. We'll share that for just another second. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Linda. And now we will move forward in our agenda. I'd like to introduce Jenny Ott, pastor of Lake Oswego United Church of Christ, and she will present for the nominations committee and tell us about their work. Now, Jenny, thank you so much for your work for the nominations committee. It's a tough job and sometimes hard to do it in time for the General Assembly, and your committee has done incredible work getting things in place. So we'll turn it over to you, and thank you for your time.
Great, thank you, Adam. So appreciate it, and good morning to all of you, to all of our delegates. Thank you for being here today. And I especially want to thank our entire nominations team and my co-chair, Jeannie Randall Bodman, for all their work. And thank you also to everyone who has agreed to serve in the coming year. I just so appreciate your time and your talent, and thank you for making our conference better together. In your delegate packet is the full slate of officers, the board of directors, and the ministry teams for the Central Pacific Conference. However, in this presentation, I'm just going to be naming those people who are being nominated to new terms or new positions. So Gail, if you're able to share that. So I will, many of you will be able to see these names on your screen, but for those who may be participating by phone, I will read them aloud for you. So coming along on our officers, being elected for a 1-year term as moderator, Pam Rossio from Lake Oswego. As moderator-elect is Vicki Stifter from Hood River. Beginning a 2-year term as secretary is Jean Parker from the Dalles. And serving a second term, 2-year term as treasurer, Bill Kunis from Portland First. Our at-large board members that we will be electing at this gathering include Carl Van Slyke, starting at term 2 from Boise Wright. Katie Dwyer from Ainsworth, at large, starting term 1. Just to note that Katie is relocating to the Salem area and will be transferring her membership to Salem shortly. So there are 3 people currently on the board from Ainsworth, but that will be changing when Katie changes her membership. Cynthia Butts coming on board, fulfilling an unexpired term and will be eligible for 2 more terms. And then our ministry representatives are voted on, they're elected as 1-year representatives from the teams. So Becky Martin from Ainsworth will be representing the Committee on Ministry. Jennifer Seach from Beaver Creek representing local church and educational ministries. Steve Gilliland from Hillsborough representing wider church ministries. And then Justice and Witness Ministries will be choosing their representative at their next meeting, and that person will then be appointed by the board to complete the year as board representative. The next slide, Gail. On the nominations committee, we have Don Frew beginning term 2. Don is also in the process of changing his membership out of Park Rose, so that will be updated when his is changed as well. Laura Creech from Nampa, she has been on the team fulfilling an unexpired term, but is now being elected to a full term 1. And Pat Ross from Cedar Hills electing for term 1. We do have a vacancy on this team. We have a person considering it from Southern Oregon as we were looking for that geographic representation, which we've been talking about this morning. On the Committee on Ministry, Melanie Uman is beginning term 2 from Eugene. Melanie is also in the process of changing membership, so that will be updated when that's complete. And Vicki Kremeyer from Boise First beginning term 1. On Justice and Witness Ministries, Kelly Childress from Ainsworth beginning term 2. Mike Huntington from Corvallis beginning term 1. Karen Caldwell from Medford will be filling an unexpired term and then eligible for 2 more terms. Beth Pfeiffer from Eugene beginning term 1. And Brendan Curran from Forest Grove filling an unexpired term, eligible for 2 more terms. Next slide. And then on our local church and educational ministry teams, Grant Helby from Portland First beginning term 1. They've previously been on the team in an unexpired term. Dave Sutton from Ainsworth beginning term 2. Laura Robinson from White Salmon beginning term 1. Lori Roberts from Nampa beginning term 1. And Christina Dow from Bridgeport beginning term 2. And then on wider church, Jean Doan from Bethel Beaverton term 2. Lynn Smouse Lopez from Ainsworth term 2. And Judith Nelson from Beaver Creek will be filling an unexpired term and then eligible for 2 more as well. So this is the slate as it stands. We'll be voting on this a little bit later this morning. And per our bylaws, we are accepting nominations from the floor. So if you would like to nominate yourself or someone else for a position or for a ministry team, please write the person's name, local church, and the position or team for which they are being nominated in the Q&A. And please, of course, only nominate someone if you have given them your permission, or they've given you permission to serve. So we'll just give a few minutes for you to add any Q&A, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well. So I see a question, I can see a question in the Q&A from Jessica Shine. Can the terms of the nominating committee be clarified? Length of service, number of meetings, and the working groups. So the nominating committee, they serve 3-year terms with a max of 2 terms. And the meetings specifically for the nominating committees start about halfway through the year, and then we meet monthly and then sort of every 2 weeks. I think hopefully that answers your question, Jessica. Okay, and I'm seeing a few nominations coming in. Bunny Oliver from Portland First for Justice and Witness. Okay, and I see the corrections on Carl Van Slyke for Right Congregational. Thank you. Oh, thank you for the spelling corrections.
I want to thank you for your work, Jenny, and for your entire committee. It's a lot of work to find the right people for the right ministries and make it the timing work. So we are especially grateful.
Great, thank you. And I'll continue to monitor Q&A if there's anything else that comes up.
Okay.
Thank you.
And again, you will have a chance to vote on the nominations later on in our meeting. Now I'm going to switch gears and present my moderator and board report. So I'm going to share my screen now, and hopefully you can see that at this point. As your moderator, I want to say it has probably never been a more challenging or more important moment to be the church than right now in this past year. Between the COVID-19 pandemic, the urgent calls for racial justice, and now climate change induced wildfires up and down the West Coast, it feels like 2020 has called for all of our creativity, our courage and faith. And through our collective response over the past year, I have witnessed the members of this conference respond with incredible generosity, grace, and commitment to the work of the church. And I want to say I am proud and I am humbled to be a part of this Central Pacific Conference of the United Church of Christ. This past year has been a pretty profound year, and I want to say a special thank you to our incredible board of directors. This picture here is most of us. Through most of our meetings, we met like this over Zoom, which allowed us to meet our sustainability and budget goals, but also just allowed us to increase our representation, increase our participation, and particularly as we got into the season of COVID, is the safest way to meet. So I'm grateful for all those folks who made time to serve in our board in this way, and I'll name them specifically in just a few minutes. But as we moved forward in this year, before COVID hit, there were some really wonderful opportunities for our board to do the work of the church. And this is one of the in-person gatherings we were able to do before COVID hit, and it is the gathering of the Holiness Project in Seattle, where we gathered with members of the Pacific Northwest and Montana Northern Wyoming conferences. And I want to thank those members of our board and other volunteers who joined us in that time. One of the things we were able to do, which I was most grateful for, was a good governance orientation with our UCC General Counsel, Heather Kimmel. And we gathered with the hospitality of Vancouver UCC to do more work on how we can be a better board and how we can function more effectively. At that same weekend, we went to Park Rose UCC in Portland and did training in anti-bias and anti-racism. I want to thank Reverend Elizabeth Durant from Justice and Witness Ministries for leading us through that training, a training that now all of our ministry teams have completed. And the work is certainly not completed. There is much ongoing work to do in our board, in our conference, in our world, but it was a good beginning, and I'm grateful for the attention there. So my thanks to Liz. I want to share that when the pandemic hit, it was an especially difficult time for many of our churches, local clergy. And I just want to thank our board for their thoughtful work helping the conference respond to the pandemic, sharing resources, convening conversations, doing a lot of incredible pastoral ministry to our members and pastors during that time. Moving on to my board report, there are some significant board decisions that were made during this time. Those are all listed in my written report. You can look at those there, and I'm happy to answer any questions after my report. But one of the things we did early on was to adopt consensus for most of our decision making, reserving Robert's rules in moments that particularly required legal specificity. But we found that that was a better way to hear all voices and move forward. In the midst of the pandemic, we applied for and received a $35,000 forgivable loan through the CARES Act and a PPP loan. And we've been monitoring that closely, and you'll hear more about that in our treasurer's report. We had to make a special one-time draw on our easement for the Camp Adams to cover costs while our camps were closed, which was an especially difficult but necessary decision to close those for the summer. We talked about our board and our support for the conference. And I want to say a special word of gratitude to our board that we had 100% board participation in a challenge for Friends of the Conference. We have a $20,000 goal to reach our budget for this year, and our board made a huge kind of vote of leadership. And so I just thank them for their generosity. As we have already discussed, we made, by consensus, agreed to the proposed changes in our bylaws. We voted to approve our 2021 budget to come to the Assembly with amendments. We agreed by unanimous consensus to approve the 2021 Camp Adams budget, and agreed by consensus to continue the experiment of combining local church ministries and educational ministries teams. And that's something we intend to continue over this next year and assess then how that is going and whether we should formalize that in our constitution and bylaws. Finally, in the midst of the pandemic, we realized that we do not have a disaster response team, and that is something that we want to have in our conference. And so we pledged to recruit and train a disaster coordinator. But in the meantime, we had agreed, Linda Jaramillo graciously accepted that responsibility for the time being. And we will continue to seek out and recruit a disaster coordinator in the future that can be trained by the Disaster Ministries office from the UCC National. So ongoing experiments you can see there. We continue on with the Holiness Project and conversations there for joint gatherings and explorations for how we can work together. We continue on with the Communications Hub, Fund Development Team, Financial Oversight Committee, and this LCM, ECM, EMC collaboration. This year, we do not have any resolutions that came before the board prior to the assembly. We do encourage our conference to study and reaffirm our commitments to prior resolutions. And I've shown where you can find those on our website. And you can read more on each one. Incredible prophetic words and things that we have to live into. And so I'm grateful for the people who've done that work and invite us to review those this year and every year. In closing, I just want to say my gratitude, express my gratitude to Arlene Arnold, Tyler Connolly, Bill Kunitz, Elizabeth Durant, Mary Sue Evers, Steve Gilliland, Linda Jaramillo, Becky Martin, Jean Parker, Pam Rossio, Jennifer Seach, Carl Van Slyke, and Diane Klaus. Diane was our moderator-elect for the first half of the year, and then with changing responsibilities mid-year was not able to continue. But we thank you for your work, Diane. Thank you for your service. And I want to especially thank this incredible moderator team and acknowledge that there's incredible strength in the collective wisdom of a team like this. It has allowed me to say yes to this invitation to be your moderator. I also want to say a special thanks to Linda Jaramillo, who is rolling off as our immediate past moderator. After 3 years of service to our conference, we realized at our most recent moderator team meeting that was the last meeting that we would have together as a whole group. And Linda, we thank you for your incredible shared leadership and the blessing that you are to our conference. It has been a joy and a delight to work with you. I'm so excited to hand off the gavel to Pam Rossio in just a little while. I want to say again, thank you to our ministry teams and all of those who've served on our board. Thank you to the volunteers on every work group, task force, and committee in our conference. Thank you to our incredible conference staff who do so much and are so dedicated. And lastly, I want to say thank you to my home congregation, Hillsborough First Congregational UCC, for supporting my work here with the conference and sharing my time with the conference so that I could do this. So that is my report, and I want to thank those who've helped make that possible. If we have any questions, you can indicate those in the chat there. And now we're going to move on to a special presentation.
Adam, I just want to say there were two people in the question and answer, Kim Vogel and Janet. Janet Parker asked if the disaster coordinator will be a paid position. We'll get back to you on that. We'll need to talk to Disaster Ministries. And then Kim Vogel volunteered to, and so Kim, we'll put your name through to that team. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. And thank you all for your comments there, and we will follow up. Yeah, we can't hear the clapping in the room right now, but thank you for your affirmation for Linda's work, everyone. Now, I want to move us ahead in our agenda, and I'd like to invite Reverend Dr. Pat Ross to join us, and if one of our tech hosts could elevate her and prepare the slides for her presentation, we move forward to the presentation of the Reuben H. Huneman Award. Pat, thank you for joining us. I'm going to ask you to unmute and ask Gail to bring up the slides for Pat.
Well, thank you. This is really an honor to be able to present the Reuben Huneman Award. It's an honor for me in two ways. I get to say a few words about the award, especially about Reuben, and then a few words about the person who's going to be receiving it. Reuben was part of the formation of the United Church of Christ. He was a leader. He came from the evangelical and reform side of our union. He brought a theological voice. He was a biblical scholar, a voice for justice, a good negotiator, and a very kind person. He served as one of the members of the church as it was forming, and that was a pretty big challenge because we were bringing together the feisty Congregationalists who were determined to always be able to make their decisions solely on the basis of their congregational votes, and the more perhaps staid and dignified evangelical and reformed people who came with a sense that hierarchy was not terrible and that sometimes we needed to work together. By having a group of people, including Reuben and many others, who were able to talk that through and work that through, we got started on the process, which is probably still going on. But we are the United Church of Christ in part because of the work of Reuben and many people like him. Reuben was a scholar and a singer, a traveler, a faithful church member, and most of all, a pastor. And our denomination is strong in part because of Reuben Hinneman and the people like him who were present at the beginning and continued to love and serve this church their whole lives long. And so some 28 years ago, as he was retiring, the conference established the Reuben Hinneman Award for Christian Leadership. And this year, several very worthy candidates were nominated for this award. And after deliberation, the choice was made that it should go to Chuck Curry, the Reverend Dr. Chuck Curry. So it's with pride that I present this award to Chuck, who I've known for a very long time. Chuck has spent his whole life as an advocate for justice, as a person who cared and worked with people who are houseless and people who need assistance in getting along in the world. He's worked very hard in groups like Baloney Joe's many years ago, and Burnside Advocates, places that don't even exist anymore. But all through that work and his advocacy, while homelessness has not been solved, there are more services and more shelters for families and young people. Chuck played a real role in that. And then after nearly 20 years of working directly with those issues, he decided that it would be good to become a member of the clergy. Chuck didn't grow up in the United Church of Christ. He was a Southern Baptist in his youth, and Lutheran churches were part of his growing up, and also the Methodist Church. But when he was writing his first profile, he said, "I chose the United Church of Christ because of the theology of the open table it preaches and the strong stands it's taken on social justice." That's been very true of Chuck in his ministry all through his life. Chuck received his master's degree from Eden Theological Seminary, his Doctor of Ministry from the Chicago Theological Seminary in public theology. And he served churches in the United Church of Christ here in the Central Pacific Conference. And then he went on to become the director of the Center for Peace and Spirituality and assistant professor of religion at the Pacific University in Forest Grove. Take a breath here. Chuck has been a prolific writer all of his life. While he was still in seminary, the United Church of Christ called on him to write about commentary about the General Synod starting in 2005. He's worked for the denomination's website, and his writing has been published in the Washington Post, The Hill, the Oregonian. He's a regular contributor to the religion part of the Huffington Post. And he's considered an important voice of the progressive church. That's an honor, but it's also sometimes a challenge because not everybody wants to hear from the progressive side of the Christian church. Some people would prefer a kind of watered down Christianity that talks only about individual sin and never about the collective sins of our society. This year, Chuck was honored as the Alumni of the Year at Chicago Theological Seminary. Previously, he won awards, the Peacemakers Award from the World Council of Churches, the Valum Ecumenical Award from the Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, and the Distinguished Service and Leadership Award from the National Association of Education of Homeless Children and Youth. So you can see he's a very worthy recipient of this very prestigious honor. I've known Chuck since he was simply Chuck, a friend of my son's, and I've seen him grow, and I've worked with him, and I've learned from him, and I've always appreciated the way he lives out the teachings of Jesus Christ, the Hebrew prophets, and the way he holds up the vision of God's love and mercy and justice in the world. He challenges all of us to hold up these values and to live them out in every way we can. And so he is a very, very distinguished recipient of the award. And I don't know how this magical team of electronic people will get that award actually into his hands. I'm going to show him mine, but I'm not giving him mine. They will give you one that's just like this, Chuck. That will be very, very nice, and you can hang it wherever you want to. And your name will also go on a chart of winners of this award in past times. I'm so glad that I was asked to give you this award. Thank you, Adam, for asking me, and thank you all for being so wonderful with the technology of this whole event.
Thank you, Pat. And Chuck, do you want to say just a brief word? Thank you for being here. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the board, and thank you to Pat. It means so much to have you present this award to me. And thank you to everything that all of our churches are doing in this. That's not Pat and Jean's dog. That's probably my dog. Thank you to what all of our churches are doing in this really difficult season, and I'm proud to be part of this family. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck, and thank you, Pat. Now I'm going to turn it over to back over to Tyler Conley, our conference minister, to share another special celebration.
Hey all, it's time for a break, and we have some music that is special for someone who's here who I know loves this kind of music. We're running a little bit behind, so what I encourage you for breaks is that you take breaks when you need them. You're not on video, get up, go use the restroom whenever you want, but for this break, I want you to get up and headbang.
Yay, Debbie!
Debbie Jacober loves Def Leppard, like loves Def Leppard. And Debbie, several of us on the team have watched this like multiple times on YouTube, thanks to you. And so all of our YouTube channels are now, the algorithm makes it all Def Leppard all the time. And this coming year is Debbie's 40th anniversary this January with the conference. And we are so grateful, Debbie, for you being here. Is Debbie here to be, I know she doesn't like to be in front of the crowd, but if we could make her a panelist. Well,
there she is. Yay.
Debbie, it's so great working with you. Thank you for 40 years with us. You must have started, I've been doing the math, you must have started when you were 12. And we just wanted to celebrate you in a way that you would like, with music that you would like. Now, do you want to say anything?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Boy, what a surprise. When it first came on, it's like, oh my goodness. So thank you, thank you. You all are such a blessing, and I love my job, and thank you for letting me do it for all these years. It's great.
We love having you here.
Yes, thank you, Debbie. You truly rock. So thank you for all of the emails and all of the phone calls and all of the copies and mail and all of the bookkeeping, all of the things that help us be the church together. You make it possible. Well, in just a moment, we're going to move from celebration to some more decision making and hearing of reports. I'm going to ask Bill Kunitz to join us again when he's ready, and ask Gail to promote him so that he can share our treasurer's report and our 2021 conference budget. So the votes will come for these later, but there'll be the opportunity to hear the report ask questions, and then we'll do the vote later on. Bill.
There I am.
Thanks for being with us. And I want to say as we begin, Bill, thank you for your work as our treasurer this last year through some pretty big challenges in our world, in our region. And thank you for your steady hand on the financial responsibilities of the conference.
Well, it's been my pleasure and my privilege. I want to say greetings to all of you in the Central Pacific Conference of the United Church of Christ. My name is Bill Kunis, as Adam said, and I've served as treasurer for the last 2 years, and I'm a member of First Congregational United Church of Christ in Portland. It's my privilege this morning to provide an overview of the Central Pacific Conference finances year to date and to review our proposed budget for 2021. I trust that you've had an opportunity to review the more detailed budget proposal that's included in your information packet for the annual gathering. And we look forward to answering any questions that you may have as I run through the slides that follow. Simply click on the questions and answers at the icon at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And my colleagues will help monitor those questions as I go through this brief presentation, and we'll try to answer in real time. If not, we have to do some research. I will do that and get back to you personally with the questions that you may have. So, next slide, please. There we go. The conference reviews our budgeted finances at every board meeting and monthly online, thanks to Basecamp. We're indebted to the daily oversight of conference administrator Debbie Jacover, with whom I am on speed dial frequently to monitor both income and expenses. Conference bylaws provide for a financial working group to augment the oversight of the board, especially during the annual budget cycle. I'm fortunate to have the input and guidance this year from moderator Adam, Vice Moderator Pam, Conference Minister Tyler, Jeff Pratt, a local church former treasurer of renown from the Clackamas UCC, who now sees himself as a choir member, and of course, the very famous Debbie Jacober, who we're so grateful for their exemplary service. We worked this summer to develop a preliminary draft for 2021's budget based on the priorities that emerged over the last few years, starting with the Starling project that many of you participated in, our ministry teams, and the board of directors. So after some fine tuning, the board approved the proposed budget for you on September 12th. Next slide, please. But before
Bill, if I can interrupt you just for a minute, I don't know if your papers are rattling on your microphone.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm trying to watch a script so that I don't go too long, because I know that we're running short of time. I'll try to be quiet. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. So before we look at the budget for 2021, I think an update of where we are year to date is important for you to have. Our expectation for income and expenses this year were framed on the assumption that 2020 would be a year of transition as we welcomed a new conference minister and built on the stable foundation that had been established during the interim period and Molly Carlson's ministry among us. So last year's annual gathering approved a rather conservative budget of both income goals and spending that included travel and outreach to help Tyler get to know our ministries in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, and for us to have an opportunity to get to know him. Little did we know of the historic upheaval that would impact our lives and ministries of our churches, transforming just about everything we do in the process. Much to our relief, the conference income stream from OCWM, thank you, all of you. Per capita dues, thank you again, and friends of the conference, has been surprisingly robust. Thank you for your stewardship and commitment to the goals that we have shared so far this year. Financially, we're just about where we need to be at the end of the summer, if you look back historically. But I do think that you need to know that challenges remain for the rest of the year, especially on the income side, even though we have lower expenses for travel and some rather conservative spending on program by our ministry teams. I want to assure you that every dollar from OCWM, per capita remittance, and gifts to the Friends of the Conference will be precious as we approach the end of December this year. As you know, the CPC also received, as Adam mentioned a few minutes ago, one of those PPP, Paycheck Protection Program loans from the government for $35,800. We have followed, or Debbie has followed, all of the reporting and accounting requirements that that loan requires. And we're now awaiting some further clarification from the government about the terms of that loan and hopefully some element of forgiveness. Until that time, until we have greater clarity on where our lot falls there, the PPP loan is not in income. It remains on our books as a liability. So stay tuned for that, and we'll keep you informed as to how that loan is forgiven, hopefully most, if not all of it. Next slide, please. Given the uncertainties that seem to define our lives and our plans for the future, especially in light of the pandemic, the board will offer for your consideration and vote today a very conservative budget that is also balanced for 2021. It is in fact just a few $100s more than the current budget, but income and expense are delicately balanced on the assumption that we will once again be able to reach the financial goals we set for the conference support in our local congregations, even as we try to continue to extend our prophetic outreach and program expectations. Next slide. Once again, we have not increased OCWM income at $215,000, which is what we have for this year. We project that per capita dues will rise to about $70,000 from the current $66,000. And we've maintained that the goal for the Friends of the Conference Fund will come in once again at around $20,000. Adam mentioned the work of the fund development team. We are very grateful for their monthly meeting, and they include Adam and Tyler and Len Clausen from the Hillsborough United Church of Christ and John Aney from Lake Oswego and myself. It's a small team, and we look forward to having new members join us, but it's a small team that strives to enable the generosity of many individuals throughout the conference, with special thanks to the members of the board of directors for their fundraising leadership. We'll continue to draw 4% income from our endowment fund once again, celebrate the strengthen the church offering for local church ministries, and tap into the income as we have done this year from the Gresham Church property, which continues to be leased by another congregation. Likewise, our expense budget is almost identical to last year's bottom line, even though we have moved some dollars around to enhance the conference priorities to foster communication by developing a website, maintain ministry team programs, and justly compensate our staff. More detail is available, as I said earlier, for your consideration in the budget packet that was included for this meeting. So here's a visual presentation for the expenses that we anticipate in 2021. The largest piece of the pie there is what we share with the wider United Church of Christ through OCWM. We share 25% of what we raise from local congregations here in the conference, which is one of the highest percentages of all the conferences in the entire United Church of Christ. The smaller slices indicate funds that we allocate for Committee on Ministry teams, Justice Witness, local church, educational ministries, wider church ministries. And the final slice, that purple slice up near the top, is for CPC web development, formerly allocated to the Starling Project, Experiments in Communication. And the board felt that this was an appropriate way to expend those funds. Next slide, please. So here are our program projected expenses for personnel. The red slice is what we allocate for compensation and benefits of our conference minister. The orange slice is for the associate administration, associates compensation and benefits, both of which we have raised 3% this year. The gold slice is for office expenses, which have pretty much stayed the same for the last few years. An increase in funds to compensate our communications contractor, the Reverend Gail D. And the blue and purple slices for conference minister and board travel, which is more than we spent in 2020, but less than we spent in 2019. And given the uncertainties of the pandemic restrictions that might be at play at 2021, we tried to guess how much we could spend for travel. Next slide, please. Well, finally, a slide to celebrate you, or at least some of your congregations. Here is the most up-to-date list that I have of congregations that fulfilled their goals and contributed to OCWM in 2019. Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for your commitment. And as somebody indicated earlier, when Chuck Curry was getting his recognition, I can hear applause all over the conference for these congregations. Next slide, please. And here's the honor roll for churches and congregations that not only provided exemplary OCWM support, but whose members responded to special offerings throughout the year, including One Great Hour of Sharing, Neighbors in Need, Strengthen the Church, and Veterans of the Cross. Again, you can hear the applause, I'm sure. Oh, but look, some people are actually standing in their living rooms and their offices. So we are so grateful for the stewardship example that these churches have provided, and many of you. And there's hopefully space in the next year's for your church's name. Next slide, please. So thank you once again for all of your generosity and support. The Central Pacific Conference looks forward to a fulfilling and faithful year ahead as we focus on our shared ministries. On behalf of the Board of Directors, I want you to know our sincere thanks for your time and attention this morning. And that's about it. As I said, more detail is available in your meeting materials, and we stand ready to try to answer any questions or acknowledge any comments that you may have this morning. There will be voting later in the meeting. I don't know exactly what time that will be. Maybe Adam can give us a hint about that. But if you have any questions or comments, we're certainly willing to hear them. I've not been able to monitor them during the presentation, so if there are any that you've noticed, let me know.
Yes, so we planned the vote at closer to 11:30. Okay. But if you have any questions now, you can indicate those in the chat or the Q&A, and we can talk about them then.
And maybe if people have questions that come up over the next few minutes, we can respond accordingly as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, for your incredible service to our conference, and thank you. It's been a privilege to work with you this year.
Thank you, and likewise, Adam. I'm so grateful for your leadership.
Now, we will invite you to add any questions, and Bill can answer those while we're going. What I'd like to do is proceed forward and invite Natalie Becker to come and share the Outdoor Ministries report and notes about Camp Adams budget, and we'll follow up with questions with her. Natalie, welcome back. Thank you.
Thanks. Good to be back. I'm happy to be here again this morning to share with you the Camp Adams 2021 budget. Before I get started with my presentation, I just wanted to remind all of you, let's see, there we go, that during my presentation, you can submit questions and comments that you might have using the Q&A feature. And at the end, just like Bill suggested during his, there'll be time for us to answer any questions, respond to any comments that you might have. Before I dive into 2021, just as Bill did, I wanted to recap 2020 for you. And boy, it's been quite a year unlike any other. In March of this year, the Camp Adams Advisory Committee met just as we were starting to grapple with the realities of COVID-19 in the United States. And I was remiss in not adding the names of our Camp Adams Advisory Committee to this presentation. So maybe somebody on the committee could add them in the chat box for me. That would be wonderful so people could see who's representing us. It's Pam Rossio, Tyler Connolly, Bruce Bishop, Michael Grogan, and David Davidson. So thank you for all of your work and service with us this year. So we all met via Zoom, and we came to the difficult but important decision that there was really no way that we could safely reopen Camp Adams to guests, to retreat groups, and to our youth campers during the year of 2020. In June of this year, Governor Brown followed up with a mandate that closed all overnight residential youth camps in Oregon for the 2020 season. And so we were faced with a loss of two revenue streams, two of our significant revenue streams, both retreat groups and the youth camp program in 2020. So we needed to re-examine the 2020 budget, adjust the budget accordingly. And in May of 2020, this same advisory committee took to the board of directors the suggestion that Camp Adams be placed under the terms of financial conservancy. And they agreed to do so. And so since May of 2020, Camp Adams has been in this financial conservancy mode. So what do I mean by financial conservancy? Well, in this context, financial conservancy is the strategy for addressing the loss of traditional revenue streams due to the pandemic. And it involved, in simplified terms, two things. One, identifying remaining income streams, and then two, minimizing expenditures as much as possible without jeopardizing the resources needed to protect the future ministry of Camp Adams. So what has that meant in 2020? Well, the income streams that we identified as remaining was the annual draw from the Camp Adams Conservation Easement Endowment, which was at 4%, but with approval of the board, as Adam shared in his moderator's report, was increased to 5% draw, annual draw. And secondly, we had some remaining grant money from the Gray Family Foundation, a couple of grants we'd received, and we could still expend that. In terms of expenses, again, we looked at the budget, we looked at minimizing the expenses that we could, but we wanted to protect the future of our ministry and our site. So here's a list of the expenses that we retained in the 2020 budget. Full-time staff salaries and benefits, although we did not have any summertime staff because we did not have any campers here. Utilities, administrative costs, operational licenses, and other safety monitoring specific to the water and waste treatment systems here on site, insurance, property tax, and necessary site maintenance. In a more detailed way, the projected income, $88,000 after we looked at this financial conservancy model. Expenses reduced to $163,000. This still left us with a deficit of around $75,000. Our approach to covering that deficit in 2020 has been twofold. One is the one-time extraordinary draw from the Camp Adams Conservation Easement Endowment that Adam mentioned again in his moderator's report earlier this morning. The board approved that withdrawal and it was completed in June. The second has been to engage in some asks for donations and some fundraising. Thank you, all of you, and to all of your churches who have stepped up and helped and donated. To date, we've raised nearly $20,000 of the $25,000 we need to raise by the end of the year, and we will continue with those fundraising efforts throughout the year in order to avoid a year-end deficit. So what does this mean for 2021 and the proposed budget that I'm offering to you today for questions and for your vote? Again, in your packet of information for the gathering, there's a more detailed spreadsheet. I invite you to look at that more closely as I go through this, but here it is in broad brushstrokes. Faced with the same uncertainty about the pandemic and if, when, and how we'll be able to safely reopen camp for users and youth camp programming, we are offering up for your consideration a 2021 budget that continues the financial conservancy strategy. The income that we can count on is the annual 5% draw from the endowment, and also some scheduled forest management income. 2021 was a year that we had scheduled to do some green sustainable thinning in our working forest here at camp. And together we project that those two income streams will bring in about $108,000. Again, looking at expenses, trying to decrease them in as many ways as possible without jeopardizing our site and our program. We have come up with a $158,500 projected expense, leaving us with a projected deficit of just north of $50,000. We will have some really important decisions to make in a dynamic situation full of uncertainties as we move into 2021. As an advisory committee and the conference board, and myself and my husband as staff, we'll need to make some decisions about if, when, and how to reopen Camp Adams safely to guests, the potential use of some reserves that we have that we thankfully did not have to touch in 2020, and continue with fund development, asking for donations, engaging in fundraising, and that type of activity. But even though that we're faced with this uncertainty and these difficult decisions, I want to tell you a little bit of good news. The good news is that Camp Adams has a clear and vibrant ministry, and that ministry has guided the CPC community in making a series of sound financial decisions for camp that afford us more options, quite frankly, than are available to many other camps and retreat centers. Although we cannot be physically present right now with each other on site, because we have built connection and community over generations, and because our ministry is the ministry of the CPC, this ministry continues. And here are a few ways that it is continuing in this era of physical distancing. The ministry continues as we begin to reach out and engage our older youth campers, building on the relationships and the trust that they've cultivated over years of participation in youth camp programming, to engage them in the anti-racism work of our conference, to give them the lenses of the tools to think about these issues, to act on these issues within their faith community, and to amplify and lift up their voices in our conference as we engage in this important work. The ministry continued earlier this month when in the face of the Riverside fire that threatened our site, the Camp Adams community raised nearly 10% of the total amount raised in the Colton Fire Department's GoFundMe campaign that they launched in order to fix the equipment they needed to continue to protect our community. This ministry continues as we work with our partners at Sustainable Northwest to demonstrate and model sustainable forestry and to build viable hyperlocal timber markets in our region. We can now proudly say that timber from Camp Adams is part of a new landmark building in Portland, the new Meyer Memorial Trust building. And this ministry continues as we find ways to live into the relationship we entered into with the First Nations of Oregon when we signed the Camp Adams Conservation Easement, as Tyler mentioned earlier today. So although we face challenges in this era of disruption, we do so with our feet, heart, and head firmly grounded in our outdoor ministry. So 2021, here we come.
Well, thank you, Natalie. And thank you to you and Bob both for your management of our camps during this and really incredibly challenging time. So we are grateful that that it is safe for now. And as we do that, I'll just let you know there is a question open in the Q&A that you might want to take a look at, Natalie, and maybe you can answer. Others, if you have a question you'd like to ask, Natalie can check those there in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll follow up with them shortly. The vote upon the Camp Adams budget will come just a little bit later.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it's our honor to be your outdoor ministers, to be stewards trusted with Camp Adams in this moment. The question is a great one. It comes from Scott. Please elaborate on the approach for forest management income with respect to the importance of forests and sequestering carbon and addressing global warming. So I'll try to give kind of a short answer to this, but this is a fantastic question. As part of our conservation easement, we negotiated 50 acres to be kept as a working forest. And it's really a demonstration forest, how we can balance the need of the economy and the culture of timber in Oregon, but do so in a sustainable and green way, and in a way that plugs into this very, very local timber market. So our consulting foresters manage this forest in a very specified way. I can give you all the information about how that's done. We have a land management policy, and it's done with an eye towards maintaining the maturity and the health of the forest, while also contributing to our local timber economy.
Thank you, Natalie. And thank you, Scott, for your question. If you have other questions, drop them in there and we'll answer them as we can. God bless you in your work there at camp. And I have my shirt, I will be back, and we really will. We really will.
Well, I relaunched that fundraising campaign for the next 2 weeks. So it's on, I'll get it up on the website, and it's in Facebook. And if you have any questions, people can email me. I'll also look through the comments to make sure that I'm catching any of those questions. And thank you, Adam.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Now I'd like to welcome Linda Halleck as the immediate past chair of the Idaho Association to share a report. And Gail, if you would pull up the photo from Pilgrim Cove that was shared, that would be helpful.
Okay, well, greetings from McCall, Idaho. It was rainy this morning, but it's sun's coming out now. So let me update you, everyone, on the Idaho Association and what's happening in our part of the UCC. The Idaho Association of 9 UCC churches stands at about 750 members. Our churches are scattered across the central and southern part of the state, the largest of those churches being located in Boise and the McCall areas. The Idaho Association will be guided for the next 2 years by Reverend Kathy Abend of the Boise Right Church, one of the largest of the UCC congregations. I have been moderator for the past 2 as a lay moderator. The assets and ministries of the Idaho Association include 75 low-income housing projects for seniors located in the Boise and Nampa areas, known as High Horizons, and Pilgrim Cove Camp, which is located on 11 forested acres on Payette Lake in McCall. And this picture that's on the screen is one of the cabins that was recently renovated on site. It was part of an Adopt a Cabin program with the McCall Church, who donated about $4,000 for for renovation of the interior. And the foundation board covered the balance with volunteer labor. Going on about High Horizons, it has an 11-member board with representation from a number of UCC churches, a professional management company to oversee the developments, and a waiting list for apartment rentals. Now, while High Horizons is more than holding its own during this pandemic, Pilgrim Cove Camp, which hosts multiple person camps both summer and winter, has suffered significant financial losses this year. As a matter of fact, this summer totaled $165,000 in losses. As a matter of fact, under the continuing COVID concerns, the foundation board, which manages the camp, has determined to close it for the winter. Further, we have on-site camp managers who cannot unfortunately continue at Pilgrim Cove due to significant health issues, and new management will be hired after the winter season in order to try to conserve financial resources. Our foundation board has 11 members with representation from 8 of the 9 Idaho churches and is making every effort to try and upgrade facilities while maintaining a balanced budget. Our camp is 93 years old, so there's a lot of maintenance to a camp that old. This is a major challenge during the coronavirus. The good news is that the faith and commitment from our Idaho Association UCC church members remains strong and true. And that is my report from the Idaho Association. Thank you for including me in the conference, and I've been enjoying last night and more today. I've been in the business meeting all morning, so thank you.
Thank you, Linda, and blessings to your church there in McCall.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to turn it over to Tyler to share his report and state of the conference. Tyler.
Hey all, I am so glad to be able to present I call it a conference minister's report. I know that in the past this has been the state of the conference, but I want to tell you some about what I have been doing and we have been doing in the past year. And first I want to say that one of the first things that I did, and one of the things that I think is important to do in your first year, is to listen for what is the unifying call that we have together as a conference. Who are we and who is God calling us to be? How is God calling us together? And that's not something that I can do. It's something that we have to listen to God together. And so as I listened for who we are, and you've heard me say this already once today, but we are the United Church of Christ in Southern Washington, Oregon, and Southern Idaho. We are the United Church of Christ. And that means that we have a particular version of Christianity that is inclusive, and then we are in Southern Washington, Oregon, and Southern Idaho, and that affects who we are and how we live out our call as Christians. And then as I listened, I heard 4 what we have been calling mission priorities, and I call them our calls as a conference. We are called to foster stronger connections. We are called to nurture spiritual growth. We are called to amplify our prophetic voice. And we are called to become an anti-racist conference. And I'll talk a little bit more about those in a little bit. So here is some of this year by the numbers. And I think the first important number is that I had 4.5 months as sort of a regular conference minister before the pandemic, before that fateful day on March 13th, when I had to send an email to the conference saying, we really can't be meeting in person. And so it's because of that that I only drove 2,224 miles this year. Usually conference ministers put a lot more miles on there. And so I've had to visit a lot of you on Zoom. And that in some ways that's been great. We have been able to have more meetings on Zoom. Our committee on ministry has realized that they can meet more often and do more work in the in-between times. And that has been great.
We're seeing the whole lineup of slides.
Why don't
So
we,
maybe it's a presenter mode problem.
I've never
Does
done
Gail
PowerPoint.
happen to have it?
I will send it to Gail.
Yeah, I don't right now, but we could go quick.
And maybe now is a time for a break and some music.
Good idea.
That would be great. We have a video queued up. Gail, do you want to share this? I'll just say a word about it while you find it.
Which video is it? Oh, the Cynthia?
Yes, this is a video from Cynthia Butts, a member of Ainsworth UCC, recently retired from the music ministry there, and part of a program of storytelling. And it's called Our Bold Voices, and it's an event that's coming up on the 9th and 10th. But on a day when in Portland there are protesters and counter-protesters gathering, Louisville is in the midst of an uprising, and so this is a good meditation for us. So I invite you to play that now, Gail.
Say it with me. Black
Lives
Lives
Matter.
Matter. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, and marching up to freedom land. Oh, ain't gonna let no police turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let no police turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking and keep on talking and marching up to freedom land. Yes, ain't gonna let injustice turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, and marching up to freedom land. Oh, I ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, keep on walking, keep on talking, and marching up to freedom land.
Wow. Thank you, Cynthia. Black lives are beautiful. Black lives matter. Black joy matters. I drove 2,224 miles. I visited with a lot of people online. We also had 2 cataclysmic events and 1 uprising for Black lives this year. And that, of course, affected all of the things that we did this year. I visited with 5 churches that were in crisis in one way or another. And it's because of your giving to our church's wider mission that I was able to be with churches, that we were able to be there on the phone when the fires happened. It's because of your giving to our church's wider mission that 100% of the money going to wildfires is going. Go ahead and share that, Gail. and go all the way to 5 churches. There. Go back. So I also, one more. I visited 27 worship services this year. Now, that is not as many as I would like to have visited. And I try to be in my home church at least once every 5 or 6 weeks. It's really important for my personal spiritual health to have a home church and to have that be a place that's spiritual grounding for me. Thank you, folks from Waverly. Thank you, Pastor Sarah, for being my pastor. And but I would like to visit more churches than just 27. I also preach 12 sermons, and I would be happy to preach at any of our churches. I try very hard to preach in a way that fits who you are, because we are the United Church and each of our churches is different. And I'm not the kind of conference minister who will come in and preach a sermon that is not outside of who you are. Next, we also have 4 excellent staff members. And I am so grateful for Gail for always being like, yep, let's do it. And we'll figure this out. And I am grateful for Debbie, who is always steady and behind the scenes and getting everything done and doesn't really want to be on stage, but is always faithful. I'm thankful for Bob. Bob, you have a mind that can look 5 or 6 steps ahead and then know what we're going to need the day after that. And that is so important. And I know sometimes people don't wonder because you're thinking so far ahead and we're sort of stuck in the moment. And then Natalie, your ability to merge good science, all of your education with a deep theology and a grounding is amazing. And so thank you to our excellent staff. We have worked hard this year to merge together as a staff to find some synchrony. We have regular staff meetings now. And I think that we have a great team that is running on all cylinders. Next. We also have 2 buildings, and we still own part of the building where our offices used to be, and that particular relationship has been great for me and for the conference in being able to build relationships with the Presbyterians, the American Baptists, and the Disciples of Christ. And we continue to have strong relationships with those churches through that. We also have the Latino Health Network, which continues to rent from us there and rent the offices that we used to use. And I would recommend, I am a sustaining donor to them, and I would recommend that you look at them and consider it. They were able to pay rent the entire year. Our Gresham building, we have renters there as well, Iglesia Nueva Vida, and they, as many of our churches, had some financial struggles in the middle of the year and are paying rent again now fully. And I am very grateful to them and their ministry in Gresham with our siblings who are Latinx. Next. We had 1 ordination this year, Amelia McCown. It was so exciting to be able to be at your ordination. Next. And we also had 4 completed searches. The first was starting to be complete before I got here, Amelia, and she started at Plymouth. And then we had Rob Tullock, who came in or before him, we had Brendan Curran at Forest Grove. And after that, we had Rob Tullock at Boise First. And very soon we will be having Eric Elness joining us at Portland First. We also had a couple churches that announced that they're going to be going into search. One of those is McCall and And then Amelia, in the midst of the pandemic, I think realized that she needed to be closer to her family. And she's serving still because we're doing it on Zoom, but she's now in St. Louis and will be leaving Plymouth next. I wrote approximately 70 cards. The rest of the numbers were all real numbers. This one, I just sort of counted how many cards I have left and guessed. I would like to write more cards to you and your churches. It's one of the ways that I think we can be connected to one another. And I encourage all of you to notice when it's time to pray for a church on the calendar and send a card to them. Next. We have almost $10,000 in Friends of the Conference donations, and we had 100% board participation. And I'm so grateful to the board that we had this year. And I invite anyone who wants to give to Friends of the Conference. It's because of people who give to Friends of the Conference and to our church's wider mission that we are able to do the things that we do. Next. This year we had 4 moderators. I know you think we only have 3, but we had Diane Kloss, who was moderator at the beginning of the year. And Diane, thank you for being with us at a time when we really needed you. And it was great being with you in Boise when we had to make the decision to send that email. That meant the world to me. Thank you for your leadership in the early days of my tenure. And to Pam and Linda and Adam, this model, I wasn't sure about this model of having 3 moderators be kind of our executive team, but it is a fantastic model that we have in this conference. Next. So, and you can just do all of these on this slide. There's 4 of them. And I'm going to go through these quickly. At each of my board reports, I talk about the 4 mission priorities that we have. And in everything that I do, in all of our staff meetings, we go over the 4 priorities. In all of our staff reports, we go over the 4 priorities. I am always trying to think about how are we living into the things that we say are priorities. And so, in fostering stronger connections, you will think of other ways, but here's some of the ways that we fostered stronger connections this year. With our prayer calendar, thank you, Debbie, for putting that together and restarting that. That is a great thing, and you can download that at the website. With the Zooms that we had for the pandemic early on, I think those were really important, and we now have base camps for administrators and some other ways of connecting. The clergy circle that used to be only for Portland, that when Portland clergy did, we decided because we're over Zoom and we can now, to make that open to the whole conference. And so now all of you can join us on the 3rd Thursday at noon. And then we have tried really hard this year, and thank you, Ginger, for making that possible and for volunteering for that position and allowing Gail to do some other things to make our on-the-way communications more helpful, more timely, to increase the ways that we use on the way. Next, there's 4 on this slide too. So nurturing spiritual growth, some of the ways that we usually nurture spiritual growth in the conference, we were not able to this year. We were not able to have a clergy retreat. We were not able to have a women's retreat. And I invite you, this for me is the hardest one to brainstorm. And I'm often asking people, like, how can we be nurturing spiritual growth as a conference? I know how we do that as individual churches, and we amplify the things that individual churches do, but how are we doing it as a conference? And thank you to Natalie for putting together an amazing, and for everybody who participated in that, are together in spirit, nurturing the spiritual growth of our conference through the online offerings of Camp Adams this year. And if you haven't looked at those, I invite you to go to Camp Adams blog and find resources there for nurturing our spiritual growth. And then the Racial Justice Network Zooms have not just been a place. And thank you to Liz Durant for for restarting those. Those have not just been a place for gathering and sort of chatting and talking, but actually for deepening our spirituality around anti-racist work. And that has been fantastic. And I know there are lots of other places where we have done that as well. Next. So in amplifying our prophetic voice, thank you to Adam Erickson for jumping in and adding to our Facebook. We share to our Facebook pages things that you are doing in your local church. It's one of the ways that we can amplify the work that you are doing in your local churches. I have been able to represent you in common table conversations and push back on some of our colleagues and in those conversations. And I want to thank you for allowing me to represent you to the wider community in ways that allow them to think more deeply about their justice commitments and their justice works, because you are behind me. And then the Safe Camp, being able to be present at Safe Camp at that hearing. And we have, you may have noticed or you may not have, you should go to the UCC News and see how many times we have been represented in the UCC News this year. Next. So in February, the board looked at our resolution from 2015, and they'd already been doing some work for themselves around some anti-racist work. And they realized that we needed to make this a commitment and one of our mission priorities, or we would never live into that resolution that we passed in 2015. And so they chose to put this as our 4th mission priority in February. And so I was grateful for that when the uprising for Black Lives began in April, that we had already made that commitment. The COM has made a commitment that at every one of their meetings, they will have anti-racist training or anti-racist focus for part of their meeting, that they will make that part of who they are. The nominations committee this year, thank you, Jenny and Jeannie, for your leadership, worked really hard to live into our anti-racist commitments. And we still have more to do there. And we are working on not just diversity, but actually lifting up leaders into positions that can lead them to other positions so we can become the anti-racist conference that we want to do. And then finally, the Reckoning with Our Racist History cohorts. That is a project of the Common Table, and many of our churches have decided to join and do cohorts. And our board, I want you to know that we have 4 board members and 2 staff members and myself who will be in a cohort as we reckon with our racist history in Oregon. And that history also includes Idaho and Washington. There is a reason that up the hill from my house, and this is the last thing that I'll say, that up the hill from our house, my house in Washington Park at the Jefferson Monument, that the seals of Idaho, Washington, Oregon, and Montana are included there because our history is connected to each other in this conference, and all of our history is connected to each other. And so I really believe that joining in these cohorts addressing our history in Oregon will also affect the way that we think about our history in Washington and in Idaho. You can stop sharing, Gail. So thank you all.
Thank you, Tyler, for your report and for telling these stories, important stories from across our conference. If you have more questions, you can add them to the chat or the Q&A. We'll answer them there. But now I wanted to turn it over for a recognition of some milestones and retirees from our conference. Gail, I believe you have the slides to go ahead and do that.
So look at all these people over 50 years of service.
Incredible.
I am so glad to have you in this conference. I've met some of you, Hector, Norm, Jean. I hope to meet more of you in the coming year. It was hard, you know, we started to have some coffees and then the pandemic started, but I'm so grateful for you. Go down now to Gail, if you will. These are the people who are having milestones this year. Bruce Swanson for 50 years this year. Bill Kunitz, Michael Hanbach, and Charles Hausbach for 45 years. Ellen Clausen, Douglas Smith, Shelley Webb, 40 years. Dorothy Brooks, Karen Caldwell, Jenny Gebhardt, Kurt Smith Jornstrom, 35 years. Now, usually this is the point when we would have them come up and we'd all be cheering and shouting and happy. And so you can like shout in the comment section. Betty Sue Sherrod, 30 years. Linda Jaramillo, it's been great serving with you. 15 years. Christina Cookcook, 15 years. Diane Rodriguez, Vicky Stifter. Wow, what an amazing group of leaders that is, those 15 years. Oh, and I can't read the 10 years. Tara Wilkins, 10 years, Tara. The chat box is popping up over those. So if there's somebody under Tara, I can't read it. So I am so grateful to be serving with all of you. Congratulations on your big milestones of 10, 15, 30, 35, 40, 45, and 50 years. We are so grateful that you are ministering among us faithfully. Back to you, Adam.
Well, thank you, Tyler. And thank you, everyone. We are truly better together, and we are so grateful for your ministry, and it's an honor to serve alongside you. Like you said, we'll be doing some storytelling, some decision-making, and some celebration. And we've had a little bit of each throughout this morning. Now we come back to some of the business of the assembly to take action. So we have had time to review the budget and ask questions in the Q&A. We've had time to review the Camp Adams budget and ask questions in the Q&A, and time to review the nomination slate as presented. So we're going to move through these three presentations. Again, these are all motions that come from committee requiring no second. But we're going to move forward to the poll feature and to begin to take that vote. Again, we remind you that votes are for voting delegates only. So if you're a clergy person, retired or active, if you're an officer on one of our boards, on the board, or if you're a designated delegate from your congregation, then you are asked to vote. So Gail, if you would call up the poll number 3, the vote to approve our 2021 budget for the Central Pacific Conference. We'll give you a few minutes we invite you to go ahead and make your vote. So we have 10 voting yes over text, and we're going to stop sharing the poll now. 96 others voted through the poll. 94 of those are yes, for a total of 104 yes and 2 abstentions. So the budget passes. The yeas have it. Great. Thank you, everyone. Please let us know if you're having any trouble. And sounds like things are running smoothly. I'll ask my tech host to continue to help support the chat message. And now we'll move forward in our agenda to poll number 4, the vote to approve the 2021 Camp Adams budget. Again, this is from committee and requires no second. We've had time for discussion in the Q&A, and we invite you to register your vote now.
Adam, we've received 10 votes for yes, texting.
Okay. And I think now we can go ahead and close. We're going to end our poll. So we have 96 who voted electronically by computer and 10 who voted by text message. We had 93 votes yes to approve the 2021 Camp Adams budget. We had 0 votes no and 3 abstentions. So the motion passes. The ayes have it.
So Adam, we have 103 yeses.
103 yeses. Thank you. That's right. 103 yeses. Thank you. I hope this seems to be working well for everyone. Please let us know if you're having any trouble. And now we'll proceed to vote on our nomination slate. And we might ask, did we have any changes to the slate from those who made nominations from the floor?
We do, and I sent a revised list to Gail, which hopefully she received and can show.
And I want to say thank you, especially Jenny. I know that nominations is not easy, and often when we get to assembly, there's still decisions being made, and we have a greatly reduced anxiety because of all of the good, faithful work that your committee has done, that you and your committee have done. So thank you to you, and thank you to Linda for being kind of a board liaison with the nominations committee in her role as immediate past moderator.
Yes, thank you, Adam. And really the thanks goes to everyone who has said yes and is willing to serve in leadership. So thanks to all of you. So this is the same slate we saw before at the beginning, at least the first terms. The board of directors is still the same. We do have that vacancy in Justice and Witness Ministries, but as I said, that the team will choose a rep that the board will approve later. Next slide, please, Gail. So again, the changes here are what is highlighted in yellow. So we corrected Brendan Curran's first name. We've added Bunny Oliver, who was a nominations from the floor, and John Boonstra, a nomination from the floor. Going back up quickly to nominations, there is a vacancy there. We did have a nomination from the floor. Jean Avison had offered to serve, but we have already asked someone from Southern Oregon to get that geographic representation. So we are waiting to hear back from that person. And if they come back with affirmative, then the board will, well, either whoever we get, the board will affirm that person and fill that vacancy for the year. Next slide. We did note we inadvertently left Catherine Allard off the full slate. So Kat is still serving on local church and educational ministry teams. She's currently beginning the 3rd year of her first term. Her membership currently at Meridian, but that will be changing in time. And then also Wider Church Ministries, we corrected the name for Judith Reinhardt Nelson.
Thank you. So our vote is upon this amended nomination slate with positions to be filled, the vacant positions to be filled by the board or affirmed by the board later.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And Gail, I think we are ready now to take our next poll, our final vote to approve the nomination slate as now presented with amendments. We invite you to go ahead and register your vote. Yes, no, or abstain. And Pam, if you'll just let me know when your text messages stop coming in.
Okay, it looks like we are at the same, 10 yeses.
Okay. And it looks like the votes have stopped registering now. So looks like our poll is ready to be ended. So I'm going to end it. So we have 95 votes that have registered electronically through the computer, 95 voting yes plus the 10 that have voted yes by text message for 105 votes yes, no votes no, and no abstentions. It is unanimous, 100%. Thank you. Thank you, nominations, for your incredible work. And now, as we thank all of you for your contributions of your gifts and your time and talent in service to our wider church, I'm going to hand it right over to Tyler as he leads us through the covenant as we install our new officers.
Thank you. Pam, will you join me? And will one of the other panelists who would like to represent all of the members of the conference join us? Maybe Adam Erickson, if you would be willing. Thank you.
Hi.
So now is the time when those who have just been elected make promises, and Pam, and we witness their promises, and Pam has agreed to be the representative for all of those who have just joined us. Jessica, thank you. Oh, and so I am going to ask Pam to answer this and everyone who has just been elected to answer at home. And I'll prompt you when it's time to answer. Sisters and brothers and siblings in Christ, it is an honor to be entrusted with responsibility for particular service in the ministry of the church. All of you who have been elected, having prayerfully considered the duties and responsibilities of your ministry, are you prepared to serve with the help of God in Christ's name and for the glory of God? If so, please say I am.
I am.
Do you promise to exercise your ministry diligently and faithfully, showing forth the love of Christ? If so, please say I do, relying on God's grace.
I do, relying on God's grace.
Members, God has heard the promises of our siblings, sisters, and brothers in Christ who have answered God's call to service. Do you promise to love them, honor their leadership, and assist them, that together we may be the faithful church of Jesus Christ? If so, please say I do.
I do.
Adam?
I do.
Thank you. You all are duly installed. Woohoo!
Thank you so much. And we have more celebration to do. I want to invite Reverend Elizabeth Durant to come and share on behalf of the Justice and Witness Ministry team, the Justice and Witness Awards. So Liz, welcome, and thank you for presenting these awards today.
Thank you, Adam. Good morning, everyone. I am Elizabeth Durant, and I'm speaking to you on behalf of the CPC Justice and Witness Ministry team. Every year, our team receives nominations from you, from the conference, to recognize leaders in our community who give themselves in service to God's call for peace and justice. And in this time of uprising and struggle, we know there are so many people who could be recognized. So this year we have 3 awards. Normally we would be doing this over dinner and we'd all be happy and eating, and I hope we're still happy, but we can't be together. And I'll try to be brief, as I know that we're behind schedule. So as I said, we have three people to recognize from our nominations, and our first award, so next slide, our first award for outstanding service on behalf of Justice and Witness, we want to recognize Carter Latendress. Carter created a space at First Congregational Portland in partnership with volunteer street medics to provide respite and support for Black Lives Matter protesters in downtown Portland. And He also supported the church's involvement in the Soul Box Project, a community art project that lifts up victims of gun violence. Carter's leadership has been one of simply showing up, listening, loving, and looking out for others. So we thank you, Carter, for your leadership. And if you're here, we wanted to say hello. I know we're behind schedule.
He's on the video. He's on the screen.
Okay, awesome. I just can't see him. So thank you, Carter. Check your mail because we'll be sending you the actual physical part of this award, but thank you for your service. We have a second award that we are giving. We're actually giving two for what we are calling exemplary lifetime service on behalf of Justice and Witness. And so for exemplary lifetime service on behalf of Justice and Witness, we want to recognize Willie Poinsett. Willie is a member at Ainsworth, but was nominated by Lake Oswego for UCC for her tireless, persistent work to combat racism and white supremacy within her hometown. Willie's work on the school board has directly impacted students and led to awareness and accountability for acts of racism which continue in LO schools. And her advocacy with the city council led to the creation of a task force to address inequities in city employment and hiring. Willie founded Respond to Racism, a grassroots community anti-racism group, which in addition to its own local work, collaborated in organizing the first multi-city equity summit last October with over 350 people from both LO, Westland, Tigard, Tualatin, and Wilsonville. And there are so many more examples that I could give if I had time. But please join me in thanking and in recognizing Willie Poinsett for her leadership and her ongoing service for Justice and Witness. And then finally, and again, I apologize, this is so quick, but I hope we'll take time in other spaces to recognize and gather together. A second award for exemplary lifetime service, the CPC Justice and Witness.
You would not have on your screen.
I'm sorry, what? Oh, a second exemplary lifetime service award to Denise Anderson. Denise has dedicated her ministry to building a just peace movement within the United Church of Christ. Denise has worked at the national conference and local levels to help churches through the just peace process, encouraging them to live out the gospel, not only on Sunday, but throughout the week. She has helped establish a national UCC Just Peace Sunday in September. She co-wrote the UCC handbook on becoming a Just Peace church. And she has connected with so many churches across the country in helping them to really to own and claim their presence as peacemaking, justice-seeking churches in the world today. So thank you to Denise Anderson. Thank you to Willie Poinsett. Thank you to Carter Latendresse for your work and your witness for peace and justice. As I said, check your mail. We encourage all churches to submit nominations next year. As we worship and witness and work for justice, we are better together. Thank you all.
Amen. And thank you. Thank you, Liz. Congratulations all. Well deserved. Now I'd like to turn over the meeting to Reverend Jessica Shine, who's going to be here with us as a representative from the National Church and the Optic Office. So Reverend Jessica, thank you.
Thanks so much, Adam. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so greetings from Southeast Portland. My name is Jessica Shine, and I serve as Generosity Officer with the national setting of the United Church of Christ, based in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm also a member at Waverly UCC, and this is my home conference. I remember the first time I smelled smoke after the fires tore through my city. I remember the feeling of panic, my heart racing, the tightness in my muscles, my brain saying, not again. It took a few minutes to orient myself and shift out of panic. And when I was able to do that, the very next thought that came to my mind was what happened at my neighborhood coffee shop. It's weird, I know. The 2018 fires in Santa Rosa, California tore through our neighborhoods and came within half a mile of my home. So when I smelled smoke outside our home here a few weeks ago, I felt that same panic. A few days after we'd been allowed to return home after the Santa Rosa fires, I walked to my local coffee shop to do some work. I knew the baristas by name, but this week was different. The coffee shop had more people in it, and most of us were in a daze from the fires. The coffee shop baristas were making my drink. The fire had been contained. And yet when you were walking on the street or you were inside a store, everyone was asking each other, "Are you okay? How are you?" Because everyone knew. We had all just survived something tragic. If you hadn't lost your home, you knew someone who had. And that day, as I sat at a table waiting for my coffee, a gentleman walked up and asked me, "Are you okay?" I am okay, I said, fumbling for words, because how do you describe what happened? Then I asked him, "Are you okay?" And he began to tell me that he'd lost his home and the story of his evacuation. And he followed it all up with, "I'm lucky though." In any other scenario, that would have been a crazy statement. His luck meant that even though he'd lost his home, he owned a second where his ex was living with her new family. So the night of the fire, he grabbed his kids, his new partner, his animals, and went to stay at this other home with his ex and her family and all those, their things. "I'm lucky," he said. Any other day, that would have been a ridiculous thing to say, but not that day. That was extravagant welcome. In that moment, I was reminded of how deeply interconnected we are, especially in our vulnerability. We say here at the CPC annual gathering that we're better together. No more is that evident than in the face of tragedy. You know it, I know it. We need each other. We need each other to stay connected like never before. Nearly all of our CPC churches are continuing worship and connection online, with higher attendance sometimes than before COVID. Over 80 households in our conference have participated in the Tuesday, Thursday webinars provided by national offices in Cleveland. Many of you are leading and facilitating conversations around race, reparation, and what it means to be anti-racist, using the Sacred Conversations to End Racism curriculum. Why? Why are we doing this? Because we believe in extravagant welcome. We believe that we are better together. Despite the news cycles and divisive rhetoric, we do this work together because we are convinced that the love of God is more powerful than the fear of the moment. And we're able to share these resources and help each other in our vulnerability because of your support for our church's wider mission. It's what we call OCWM Basic Support. When you give to OCWM Basic Support, you help connect people to hope in their vulnerability. When you give to OCWM Basic Support, you help us provide anti-racism training. The Sacred Conversations to End Racism that I just mentioned, which many of you have participated in, the most recent cohort now includes people from 5 different denominations. Because in the UCC, we believe it's up to us to start having those hard conversations together right now. That's because of your generosity here in our conference and how our conference leadership has committed to partnering with all our conferences to do work that wouldn't be possible on our own. And many of us are utilizing our whole lives and offering a faith-based alternative for self-education. In Eugene, Pastor John's church is called the Owl Church because they're helping the community get to know themselves in a way that isn't punitive or shameful. How can we be better together unless we know and love ourselves? This is what happens when you give to OCWM Basic Support. By the way, those 80 households that I mentioned that are registered for the Tuesday, Thursday webinars, the videos are still available at ucc.org. And perhaps you've seen them. We've hosted folks like Elizabeth Warren and her dog. We've shared resources for staying connected in worship. We've celebrated Juneteenth, some for the first time. We're being reminded of how to build bridges in this time of division. The 2.5 that John Dorhauer mentioned last night in his video is available because of your generosity. When you give to OCWM Basic Support, you're connecting people to hope in their vulnerability. When you give to OCWM Basic Support, you're practicing the extravagant welcome of Jesus in our churches, in our towns and conference and across the world. There's a whole lot that happens through your generosity. Last year, I came to the Central Pacific Conference annual gathering as a guest. I loved the Jesus I met in childhood, and I needed a place I could show up fully with my gifts and my calling. And I came to annual gathering because someone believed in extravagant welcome. This is what happens when you give. There's more room for hope, for vulnerability, and for connection. In a moment, I'll invite you to partner with us in OCWM Basic Support. If your church hasn't yet made that commitment and you're passionate about extravagant welcome and you believe that we are better together, if you see the need for deepening our connections to God and each other like never before, I invite you to give to OCWM today. If your church is already committed to OCWM Basic Support, I invite you to consider increasing your giving by 1%. First of all, make a personal commitment to give through your local church. Second of all, I invite you to make a church commitment. You can give using the OCWM form that's available in the Google Docs, using the link provided at the right or the bottom of your screen. If that's your desire to strengthen our connections to each other, to the divine, through creation, through education, and through extravagant welcome, I invite you to partner with us now through OCWM Basic Support. And on behalf of the national staff of the United Church of Christ, thank you. Thank you for making room. Thank you for your generosity.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for that word and for the connection to the wider church. We truly are reminded in this moment of how interdependent we all are. And thank you, all of you, for being a part of today and for you making your presence and your voice known in this way. I want to say a special thank you to all of our delegates who went through that orientation, and a special thank you to Corliss Marsh, who did the delegate orientation for the first time over Zoom for this year in a kind of unknown, uncharted waters. And now, but as we prepare to kind of close our time together in just a few minutes, we're going to have the ceremonial handing off of the gavel and the final closing. We're going to have announcements after that and invite you to come back this afternoon to hear Randy Woodley talk about the Elohe Center for Earth Justice. But first, I want to say a special thank you to our planning team and to our chair, Adam Erickson. I want to invite you to come and just give thanks, because this is not the end, it's just really the beginning of our week together. And Adam, I want to invite you just to recognize a few of the people who helped make today possible.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Adam. And I just wanted to go through some of the folks who have been helping to plan this for the last 10 months. We obviously had a huge shift in moving this conference over onto Zoom. And I've already heard from quite a few of you of how this format has allowed you to participate in this conference in ways that you wouldn't have been able to if we had done this at a physical location. So as we are shifting the way we do church and the way we do conferences, we are going to keep that in mind for future conferences. So Thank you everybody for being here. This is amazing. We have had a steady 130 people here stick with us in this meeting, and I think that's probably a record. So thank you everyone. And I just wanted to run down the list of folks who have been helping to plan this and make it run as smoothly as possible. I want to thank Adam and for his wonderful presence here during this meeting and during our meetings when we have been planning for this. Adam is one of the most gentle people that I know, and there have been so many comments, Adam, in the chat section, and you can't read those off about how wonderful a job that you are doing, but I can read those off and refer to them. So Adam, thank you so much for your leadership and the way that you are you're doing this. So we've also had Debbie Jacober, who you've already met, the office manager here at the Central Pacific Conference. Gail D., the Central Pacific Conference communications coordinator. Tyler Connolly, the Central Pacific Conference minister. Valerie Garrick, chaplain at Providence Hospital in Medford. Liz Durant, chair of the Central Pacific Conference Justice and Witness Committee. Paula Soul from Ashland. Jeff Pratt from Clackamas. Colin Shepard, music director at Cedar Hills UCC. JJ Crow, associate minister of faith formation at Cedar Hills UCC. Nancy Cook, member at All Peoples UCC. Pam Rossio, incoming moderator for the Central Pacific Conference and member at Lake Oswego UCC. And Tara Wilkins, pastor at Bridgeport UCC. And we have also had the pleasure of working with the many, the band that you have been, we've had the privilege of listening to, and we will continue to listen to them. So friends, a big thank you to everybody who has helped make this possible.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you all. Now I wanted to, it's pretty hard to ceremonially pass off a gavel, but that is what we are trying to do today. And I want to say just a deep word of gratitude to Pam Rossio, currently serving as our board secretary, who accepted the call to step into the role of moderator-elect. Pam has an incredible spirit of joy and possibility, and it's infectious. And she is so dedicated to this conference and our camp. And so Pam, I want to thank you for accepting the call. And we have just a short video to share with you that if Gail can cue that up. This is our ceremonial passing of the gavel.
We are so glad to welcome you as our next moderator, the Central Pacific Conference. And we pass on ceremonially the gavel and the stole and this medallion. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
It's an honor to have you as my past moderator to guide me.
Thank you, and thank you for accepting this call in this challenging time and stepping up and offering your leadership and service to our conference and the wider church. So, bestow this upon you.
Hey, thank you.
Okay, I am going to make a few remarks. And first of all, I am very grateful to be with you all, and we are so much better together. And thank you for sticking with us as we did the conference business. About an hour and a half ago, I thought, oh my goodness, we're going to be working till about 2 o'clock. But we sped it up, and I think we did okay. So thank you. I know it might have felt a bit rushed, but as you know, can only handle being online for so long. But my name is Pam Rossio, as you've heard. I'm your newly elected lay moderator. I have very big shoes to fill following Reverend Linda Jaramillo and Reverend Adam Hange. I cannot thank the two of them enough. Linda, you have been a wise and passionate leader, and I will miss you so much on the board of directors and the Mod Squad, but I am so thankful that you are heading up our disaster relief team. Thank you for your generosity and your service. I know you are just a phone call away. Adam, thank you for being such a loving and pastoral leader as moderator. You have given so much time to our conference these past 2 years as moderator-elect. Chair of our search committee as we found Tyler, and moderator this past year through the pandemic and the fires, all while pastoring Hillsborough UCC and parenting 3 small children. You must be an undiscovered superhero. Thank you for your generosity and service. Our conference is so much better because of your leadership, Linda and Adam. I'm thrilled that I still get to be with you, Adam, on the Mod Squad this next year, and with Vicki Stifter. A big thank you to all who have agreed to serve on different conference committees, working groups, and the board. We are better together. Thank you, Tyler, for your leadership, especially during this difficult year. Again, we are better together because of you. Thank you to Gail D for your leadership as our communications director. This virtual conference could not have happened without you. We are better together. And I could go on and on and on. I just am so proud. I am also sorry for not mentioning more amazing people serving in our conference. I am so proud to be a part of the Central Pacific Conference and to do my little part because I do know that we are better together. I'm sure that you're ready for a break and some food. So in honor of my favorite place on earth, or one of my favorite, but it's at the pretty close to the top of the list, it is Camp Adams. Sorry, I lost my screen. Camp Adams. And so I thought that we could sing Johnny Appleseed Grace since we couldn't sing it at camp this year. Our annual gathering is the best place to sing it after Camp Adams. So please sing along, and because I really need you to sing so that you won't hear my voice too loudly. And in case you don't know the words, I'm going to drop them in the chat box. Alrighty. Are you ready? Here we go. Oh, the Lord is good to me, and so I thank the Lord for giving me the things I need, the sun and the rain and the apple seed. The Lord is good to me. Amen. 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 So my first order of duty as the moderator is to officially close our business session. So see you back here at 1 o'clock for Randy Woodley.
The world's on fire tonight. The streets are crying tonight. One more bullet found its way. One more life gone today. How do we change the ending of this story? What can we do to make it out? Let justice reign. Let it pour on this dry ground. Let mercy run. Let it flow where hurt is found. Like a river through the streets, like a flood with waters deep, right through our hearts, straight through our hearts. Let it rain, let it rain, let it rain, let it rain. This town's gone red tonight. My heart feels bad tonight. The words they fly back and forth, head down, defend your turf. We all want to stay alive, just trying to get back home again. justice reign. Let it pour on this dry ground. Let mercy run. Let it flow where hurt is found. Like a river through the streets, like a flood with waters deep, right through our hearts, straight through our hearts. Let it rain, let it rain, let it rain, let it rain. And not one more. Enough is enough. Say their names. Enough is enough. Not one more. Enough is enough. Say their names. Enough is enough. Not one more. Enough is enough. Say their names. Say their names. Enough is enough. Let justice reign. Oh, let justice reign. Let it pour on this dry ground. Let mercy run. Oh, yeah. Let it flow where hurt is found. Hurt is found. Like a river through the streets. Like a flood with water.